We're very lucky today to have one of our talented product designers, Hannah, to take us through some of our design makeovers. And all of the designs are submitted from members of our Design Circle community on Facebook. So over to you, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Jess. It's such a pleasure to be here. This is my first Canva Space contribution. I'm really excited to be part of it. I'm dialing in from New Zealand, although I work for Canva Sydney. Today, like Jess said, we'll be making over 3 designs submitted from the Canva Circle community. I'm really excited to have chosen these 3. There were so many submissions, and I chose these 3 great designs. They're already great designs, but I thought they'd be great examples to teach others as well. Some really good best practices in design. First up, we have Mike Allen's design. He's launching a new business, and he wanted critique on his new logo design. Nitty, she submitted a flyer. It was a really cool design for a online Hindi tutoring business. And lastly, Giovanni, if I'm saying that right, Gio, anyway. He went by Gio when we chatted. He submitted a really cool poster for a pizza shop. So a really nice range of designs for us to work on together. Let's get started with Mike's. I'll share my screen. All right, where's Mike's? Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see that. It's beautiful.
Awesome. Okay, so Mike submitted this really cool new logo for his new business, which is called Flying Languages. So without doing any research into what his business was, what I picked up on the design was that it was playful and fun and interactive. That's what this sort of paper plane gave me, but also this really cool idea of flying languages, that it gave me the sense of a real immersion language learning. So I thought it was a really cool topic or subject to use for the logo. But there was a couple of things that I thought we could really hone in on and improve in his design. So firstly, he's got a really cool color palette. He actually sent me this color palette that he's sort of using to inform all of his design. He started to think about some of his social media and banner and website assets that he needs. So this is a really awesome way to start. It means that everything you create can remain consistent. What I did want to do though is, if you look at the design, it has a lot of colors, and it's actually in many sort of formats going to be very small. So I think the best thing we could do with the logo would be to take some of these colors out, and some of the line work too. It's actually, if it gets really small on, say, the corner of a banner or corner of a Facebook post, I think 1, 2, or 3 colors is going to be strong enough. So the first thing we'll do is take out some of these elements. So if I select it all, you can just see how much work he's put in. There's a lot of things going on. What we love is this paper plane. So I'm going to make sure we keep it. I'm going to cut it. Now I'm going to remove this blue one, this purple one. What else is in here? I'm going to keep that. I'm going to keep this speech bubble. I think that's really cool and a fundamental part of what his business offering is. It's a really nice motive to use. There's lots of other things going on in here. What else we got? So you can see how much he might be listening in and thinking of being really ruthless, but we're going to build this back up and it's going to be really beautiful. Okay, so first we've got this awesome speech bubble, which I love, but once you layer it with another shape, I think it's actually going to add too much complexity. So a really simple way to keep this really cool icon, but simplify it, is just use a circle. So all I did to bring up a circle with a shortcut is to press my keyboard C. And all this does is just mentally, for the people looking at it, just simplifies it into a circle with a little triangle on the corner. I'm going to paste back in my paper plane. Now here's the guts of what I want the logo to be. A lot has been stripped back. I hope he's not there being like, no, all my work. but I think especially when it gets really, really small, something simple like this is what you're going to want. The other thing I think is really cool is that the paper plane has some dimension to it, but the speech bubble is quite flat, which is making the paper plane sort of come forward, which is really nice. And it is quite a flat shape in itself, but it does have some dimension with this little shadowed bit and a little bit of line sort of implying the sort of planes of the flat paper. So while the circle is flat, I think it would be nice to just put a little bit of life back into the circle. So I'm going to do this by, I'm just going to put, because I don't need it right now, the plane right at the back and work on the circle. So I'm going to add another circle by pressing my keyboard C, put it in the middle. I'm going to turn it white. Where's my white? And then I'm going to make another one and make it the peachy color. Now what I'm doing with this is making a cute little highlight just to give some life to the speech bubble. Let's see what we do here. All right, so that is our shape for the speech bubble. Now what we also want to do, if you can see, the plane has a very specific light direction. So the shadow on the plane is coming from the top and coming down. So although this is just a cartoon icon, we want to keep that sense, like that little bit of realism that will tie the two objects together to make them feel like they belong together. So when we do put our speech bubble back on, all I'm doing when I do that is Command C to cut it away and then Command P to put it back in exactly the same place. Is I'm going to change this highlight to the top corner where the sun would be coming from. Probably about there. Let's see what that looks like if I put the plane back on the top. Cool. So now it looks like both the objects, our main pieces of this logo, have a light direction coming from the same place, which sort of ties them together a bit more. Now there's one more thing that I removed from Mike's design that I do think really added something, which was a really slight shadow behind the speech bubble. So I would like to bring that back. I think I searched one before, so it might be right here for me. I think this is it here. Cool. So I'm going to put a shadow behind everything, and I could do black, perfectly fine, but I do have this really nice dark blue that's already in his logo. So I think for consistency, I'm going to keep that color. I'm going to make it just slightly bigger than the speech bubble, and I'll put it in the back. Cool. So it's super subtle. And actually what I was thinking I would do is, while I love the speech bubble, I don't always need it. So it could be one of those optional things. Sorry, not the speech bubble, the shadow. So if I don't, it depends on when I put it on, but I might not always need it. If it was on a really small, say a corner of a business card, the shadow actually wouldn't offer much. It would just be too small and too subtle. And actually the clean orange on white of the paper would probably be better. So I probably saved two variations, one with a backdrop shadow and one without. But I'll give you a quick review of what I did. So first he had multiple elements in amongst the two main shapes, including some little circle textures and some additional outlines, as well as another blue and purple outline that went in the background. You can see he sent me another example of one of the social, I think it's a Google form header that he wants to put the logo on. So I thought it would be nice to show you what his logo would look like on this beautiful blue color he chose from his palette. This might be a nice example of where you could use that drop shadow just to bring out the yellowy orange color off the background it's sitting on. So you can see what that adds, that little shadow, whereas on the white, it's actually clean and clear without it, but it would depend on what you were putting it on and how small it got. So those are the two finals of Mike's Makeover logo. I'd love to hear what you think, and if I've gone over to anything too quickly, please give Jess any questions and I can go back over it.
So what would you say were the 3 design principles you used in that one?
I said it a few times. Simplicity is definitely what I would bring to this logo.
Yeah.
The other thing is he had a really great foundation in his palette, which I think he could totally run with. I wouldn't remove any of these colors from his final palette, but they will have other uses besides the logo. Like he'll be creating so much collateral and online content for his new business. All these colors can be used in different ways while staying consistent as well.
Fantastic. We do have a question here from Jean. Would you need to do a light and a dark version of the logo?
You definitely could. The beauty of some of the colors that he's chosen is that that orange would sit on dark and light either way. If it was very dark, the corners of the paper plane might make disappear. So in Mike's original design, I'll zoom in, you can see his version put into the format. He's put a little white line around the outside of here, which could be something that you do. I do think for something so small, it adds just a little bit too much busyness, I guess. But if you did want to add something to define it away from anything that it has to sit on dark, I would add just a white stroke to the corners of the paper plane that fall off the orange shape.
Fantastic. One more question from Ariane. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Who wonders where to find the plane element. So maybe you could just pop through how to search the elements for.
Oh, sure.
Plane.
Haven't done this yet. Let's see if we can find it. Pretty big library. See how we go. That's not it. Oh, there's going to be so many. And a lot of these are localized as well. So we find in some international markets, some things are much more popular, or we need more variety in some areas. So it's not always across the world
exactly the same.
Yeah, there will definitely be different results. I can't see it. I think it'll be a matter of spending some time trawling through all these paper planes. There's so many.
Yeah, but you can see just popping over to the panel there and searching would help you. And yeah, and this is just pointing out on her interface, it's called Elements.
Yes, yeah.
Fantastic.
Cool. If there's no more questions on that one, I'll move on to the next design.
Brilliant.
Cool. So next up, we have Nitty's flyer that she has produced for her online Hindi tutoring business. I don't know if it's her own business or she's doing it for a client or a friend, but this is what she sent us. And what I loved about this, again, was the color palette. I think it just had so much going on. It was interesting. That deep bluey purple goes beautifully with the orange she's chosen. And then it has these hints of turquoise blue and a really lovely use of white on all the strong dark blue color, dark purple. The other thing I loved about it was beautifully balanced. It's almost like you start at the headline where it says Hindi online classes and you sort of bounce, you zigzag down the page and you end up at the important information, which is a really important thing to be able to do in a good piece of graphic design. Really lead the person to what is most important and then most important, and what you want them to do finally is where they finish up. So that sense of hierarchy and balance, I think, is really beautiful. But I think we should do some things to make it even stronger. Another thing I'd love to do in this design is there's a few additional elements that I think we could make a bit more consistent. For instance, this black and red is a bit of a, feels a bit mismatched with all these beautiful other elements that work so well together. Some of these circles, just making it visually more balanced, we could make them the same width all the way around both of those images. And the other thing to simplify it and make it just a little bit stronger as a more professional as a design is take away some of the variation in the typefaces. So at the moment, I think I counted them. There are 9 or 10 different typefaces in here. And while it's interesting and beautiful, I think it is quite hard on the reader to have to adjust the expectations of what they're reading for each piece of information. So not only have they got these handy text that have to be in another typeface, but then they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 additional extra typefaces. So I think we could really simplify it that way as well. And I think it would also help that balance that the design already has. All right, so I'll get going. So the typefaces I really love in here. They're really strong. Firstly, I think this is beautiful and it works really well with the gold and orange. So I'm going to take this one here and make it consistent with the other. So this is Poppins Medium. So I will make it the same. And I think it's naturally just a larger style of typeface, so I'll have to make it a bit smaller. There we go. And then I love this use of Intro Rust. I think it's a really fun but serif font. And I would like to just choose one other body copy to make consistent throughout the design. So I really like this one, Nord. So I'm going to change everything to Nord, apart from those ones I just singled out. There we go. This one here. All right, I think that's all of them. Did I do that one? I did. Okay. Cool. What's nice about this is it's Nord, but it's got a bold on it, which I think it gives it the hierarchy it needs to be the heading, a subheading on the rest of that list. I'm also going to do the same with the name here. I'm going to bold it. I also think this whole line needs just a little bit more breathing space because it is a smaller piece of text. Space between each line really helps readability. I'm going to do the same here too. I think it was 1.4 I added to the last one. Let's make them all consistent. This one, make this 1.4, already is, that's great. What's this one? 1.2, let's bring that up to 1.4 as well. All right, I think personally that's already looking just a bit more together, you know. The next thing I think we could work on is some alignment. I talked about before this beautiful zigzag we have that we move around the page. I want to make that even clearer. So I'm going to turn on my margin so I can make some better judgments about where everything's sitting. I want to line these two up. Oops, not group. I want to line them up on the right. They were just not quite right. There we go. And I'm also going to add a guide. Where are my guides? There we go. I'm going to line this up as well. Where's my guide? There it is. You can see how that pink dotted line tells me they're completely aligned on the right there. And then these are not quite aligned as well. I'm going to align them to the left. There we go. And then this logo, I had to ungroup that before to touch the text. So I'll group it back together and just align it with the main heading. Here we go. So I did love that this was centered together. So I'll pull this back. Not everything has to be perfectly left or right. It doesn't have to be rigid. This can be the nice sort of exception to the rule. I'll group that so it stays all together. Cool. There's a few more things to align over here. I think this is generally too big, so I'm going to bring it down a few points because while important, it's not as important as some of the information around it. I'm going to line it up. There we go. And then this is another exception to the rule. This because it's sitting inside a little graphic element and it's skewed to the side. It's really fun. It's supposed to stand out. It doesn't have to sit within that alignment to the right rule I've made for myself. I would like to make this very important information down the bottom a little bit higher, just to sort of match the rest of the alignment I've made for myself. So a bit higher than that. That feels about right. Great. So I mentioned before, maybe tidying up these two elements so that they match each other a bit better. I'm going to zoom in just so we can see what we're dealing with. I think, how's she done this here? I'll ungroup it and I'll just figure out what she's done. So she's got a circle stroke on top of the picture. What I'll do is I'll add a circle with my shortcut again. And I'm going to put it behind the little picture of the girl. Turn it the right color and move it back. And then I can better control the width of that circle. And make it feel like it's a better match with the bigger circle. There we go. And then this one, how's this working? Oh, this is grouped as well. I'll ungroup that just so we can see how it's constructed. I'm just going to make this all a little bit smaller because I think it's really cool. It's a really nice sort of focal point, but it is quite dominant. And I'll borrow that other circle that I made and move it behind the image. And to make them consistent, I'll make it slightly bigger. Great. Now, the other thing to remember is this just has a placeholder at the top of the page here. I imagine she will put somebody's face in it, which will balance out. There's a really strong desire for us as the audience to look at pictures, especially of faces. So I think when she has that top right face in the sort of profile about the tutor and the ones in the bottom, it'll feel a bit more balanced. We're just missing that at the moment. There was one other thing I wanted to tackle with this one is that the most important piece of information on this page is this contact number. And at the moment, I love this turquoise color, but turquoise beneath white is not so legible. So I think we should find another opportunity to bring in the turquoise into the design and make something stronger behind the white. So I'm going to use the purple because I love this purple blue color, which makes that number way easier to read. And the other thing about that very, very important information, the contact number, is that it is so close to the edge. And if this is a flyer she's going to print at the printers, at a professional printer, what they do is they print slightly more flyer than you need, so then they can cut down the sides. So you have no white border around the outside. And you risk losing very important information if you put it so close to the edge. So what I could do in Canva to check this, I don't actually have to order professional flyers through Canva, but they do have these really nice safety checks for preparing for professional printing. So bleed is very important, but this is the one I was talking about, the danger zone, which is to make sure nothing incredibly important is sitting too close to this red. See that red border that I've put around my whole image? That's sort of the area that I risk getting cut if I were to professionally print it. So I want to make sure my number is nowhere near there. I could even line it up with the rest of my text. I actually do really like that the rest of that purple shape bleeds off the side. It's kind of a nice sort of arrow in. I really like that. So that doesn't have to follow our rule, but the important information inside it does. So I think we've already made a really cool improvement. There's one last thing I do. It's totally optional and maybe completely subjective to me, but I actually don't read the information inside that sign that says demo class available. I wonder if all of this becomes easier to read if it's in here like this. It's just a spelling mistake, let's call it. My fault, my spelling is terrible. This makes it easier to read if we put these in an order that is easier on the eye. So I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm going to take these two, the longest two, and I'm going to put them at the top. And then I'm going to put the next longest one next to it, and that should have a gap in there. Demo class goes there, and then the last one is there. So I'll show you what I've created. With a list like that, with this, it's really nice to be able to scan it quickly. Some of this information might be really important for me. I may need to be finding a tutor that will prepare me for a competitive exam, but I may not. So by putting it in a list that's incredibly easy to scan, the information I'm looking for is easy to find very, very quickly. So what I've done is I've made this zigzag that Nitty already had beautifully running through her design. I've just made that even stronger. And I think by making this list sort of follow down that page, it's become easier to scan instead of having to sort of come back and forth looking for that information that's really important to me. Now, of course, I don't know what's most important looking for a Hindi instructor. And by putting class 6 onwards at the bottom, I may have put the most important information at the bottom of that list. So this is a design perspective. It's not necessarily what Nitty would need to do, but I think it was a good exercise to sort of see how we can make something that has a lot of information as easy as possible to scan. Yeah. Any questions so far?
Fantastic. So Nitty said, thank you so much. She's learned a lot. And then she also just added that the most important piece of information in that list is the demo class. So whether it's possible to highlight that at all, or how you would do that.
Well, how are we for time? We're okay for time. I'd like to try something else if you wouldn't mind, Nitty. I'm going to go back a few steps and bring back your sign. Here's another thing we could do. Is maybe it's a matter of just making it more consistent with the rest of the design. So what I'll do is instead of using this red, and that's right, I got rid of the teal, but we lost that beautiful teal in the image. So maybe we could bring that into the sign instead of these blacks and reds that otherwise don't really feature. Let's try. Okay, this will be a bit of an experiment. Bear with me. It might be nice if it was simplified because it had a lot of very fine detail in the string and the ring at the top. And then to make that text stand out, because we don't ever want white on such a light teal, I'll just line that up slightly better, is use our purple again. We'll see how that looks. So that's very clear to read. And another thing we could do to make it fit with the rest of our design is I have made it quite flat by turning the whole thing teal blue. So maybe we can repeat this little circle by making it the little pin that the sign is sitting on. Makes it appear like it's not floating, not stuck to anything quite so much. The other thing we could do is put a little shadow behind the sign, or we could introduce a 5th color, but I imagine that just some hints of turquoise will be all you'd want to add to such a full design that has a lot of information, quite a few colors, and it's subtle, but there's a busy background as well. I don't know if you can see the this beautiful motif in the background with academic little icons and things like that. So if you did want to keep the sign, I think that would be a really nice way to sort of make it feel more included in the rest of the flyer. That's what I do.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. We do have one last question on fonts. So obviously there were a lot of fonts on this page, and you changed them and simplified them. And Peggy had a question about, do you have any recommendations for fonts? I imagine this is personal choice a lot of the time, but for example, best fonts for education, for industry, best fonts for business.
Yes and no. I have my own personal fonts that I have used for, I don't know, a decade or more, because they always work for me. My personal favorite is Futura. But no, it doesn't really matter, honestly. It does depend on your audience. Like I was saying before, the heading in this font here, Intro Rust, it's lovely because it's quite bulbous. It's got round corners. It's fun, but it has this nice hint of something a bit more formal because it has serifs on top of the eyes. But it is personal preference. I mean, I could have gone with pretty much any of Nitty's original the typefaces she had in here. I chose Nord because it works very well at the smaller size, because it's not condensed. It's quite a round font, like using an Arial or a Helvetica has always been designed to be on a poster, but also on a tiny subtitle. It can be either. So personally, when things need to have a lot of versatility, I'd go with a rounder sans serif font, but there's not really any big rules. You'll find a lot of fonts that they have almost like a subconscious association for us because we've seen something similar used in the newspaper. Therefore, we think of it as formal or the truth or something we saw at university, or a lot of it's emotional connection as well, things we've seen before.
Fantastic. I think that wraps up our second design. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So just to recap on this one, the main things I did was she had this beautiful sort of dynamic zigzag through the design. So I just increased that really. And that was partly the alignment on both sides, and also playing with some of the spacing as well. That really helped. The second big thing I did was really simplify the typefaces we use. We went from 10 to 3, which is it was a big move, but I think it's really pulled it together. And lastly, there were just a couple of elements that just pulled away from what was a really strong palette and design. So we had some reds and blacks in here that we pulled out, and we put in something that was more consistent with the rest of the design. Cool. All right, the last one we have, and this is another good one for what we were talking about, typefaces and choosing the right ones for legibility and suitability as well. Before I forget, I'm going to duplicate this so we know where I started, because I didn't do that last time. Sorry about that. So what we've got here is a really fun pizza poster for a takeaway shop or a restaurant. And it's called It's a Pizza, which in itself is super fun. I don't want to take any of this fun away. I think it's so cool that we've got this floating slanted pizza. It's almost floating in the air. It's got this like shadow underneath it, like it's been like it's jumped off the table. And there's this guy just aghast because of the price. Like, it's fun. It's really funny. So we're not going to take any of that away. I think that's really cool. That shadow really helps lift it up and give it some dimension, but also ground it. It's got to have somewhere to sit and all of this yellow around it. So we're definitely going to keep that. The other thing I love is the color scheme. I love the tealy blue again. Maybe it's my thing. Maybe it's because I work for Canva. It's our color. And this warm yellow, it's really lovely. I think there's an opportunity to bring in more color actually, because we've got the Italian flag, that deep green and the red and the white. And those are actually also reflected in the pizza. So I think if we bring in more of those, it's going to add some consistency too. When we look at fonts, I think Geo has only used 2 fonts, which is great, but I think we could use them better. For instance, this one here is quite a condensed, tall font, which works okay in this sort of subheading. but becomes too hard to read down here. It's part of it is being condensed, part of it is, again, the teal on the yellow doesn't pop as much as it could, especially for those important pieces of information down the bottom. And the other thing down the bottom that I don't think is helping the legibility is if you go right in, they each have a blur shadow around them, where blur shadows really help on bigger objects and things that need grounding. It actually just makes small, fine things like this small type look blurry and fuzzy. So I think that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to take all these effects off this really important but small text. Cool. So the next thing I think I'm going to do is I'm not going to use this condensed font, Cooper Hewitt, for these important bits of information. I'm going to use the heading font, which is Mont Bold, which again, like I said before, like it's a really versatile font in that it's rounded, it's sans serif, it could go very small, but also works really well for the heading. So let's change all that. Mont, Mont, Mont. Last one, Mont. Okay, cool. I think they've become easier to read already. I don't know what the final format is. It's a poster, but a poster could be, you know, sort of menu size, or it could be like a large poster for, I don't know, a train station or a bus stop or something. So we've got to keep that in mind. This important information is probably a little small and a little cramped together to be the most important information in there. So I'm going to make sure it's really, really readable. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the red out of both the pizza and the Italian flag, and that is going to make the biggest difference to its readability. All of a sudden you can really see those. And I don't think they're consistently sized either. So I'm going to make this 38.4. Maybe that was me, I'm not sure. Whoops. There we go. So now they're consistent and much easier to read. And the other thing I'd like to do with these really important bits of information is they're very cramped together right now and they don't have a lot of balance. It's a funny thing, this pizza being on the side, it really, it's almost like it's pointing to something, but there's nothing there. It's pointing to this lower right corner, but it's an empty space. So I'd like to just center the bottom so it feels a bit more even, a bit more balanced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make, I mean, of course, like I said before, with Nitty's design, I don't really know what the most important information is for this business. I don't know how they, their best channel for delivery is, or how they best communicate with their customers. So that would be up to them. But I'm going to put the website where they would order, I assume, or their phone number at the top. And their social channels, I feel, are probably, but I don't know, less important. The other thing I'm going to do is, as cool as they are, these social icons, you know exactly what those handles are for. It's really great to have them. They're very helpful. They're very dominating with their own branding colors. I think we could make them more consistent with our own design. And you'll find so many variations in Canva as well, and they are all recolorable. So here's the Facebook one. Here's the Instagram one. What's the same? I think that's the same weight. Yeah, cool. So already just using these recolorable ones, we've got some really nice consistent icons. And I reckon I'm going to use our really cool teal color because it's actually not that important that they are perfectly legible. They're so, you know, they're so iconic that people will know what they are, even if they are very tiny. So I'm going to zoom right in so I can make them quite small. And I think having them the same colors as well will also make this whole area feel tidier. Like there's less to look at, less to decipher for someone who's just trying to find out who they call for pizza. So make sure that's nice and centered. That feels centered to me. Right, so now we've got a very balanced footer at the bottom. Make sure that's centered. And I think I'll give this phone number a little bit more space with, can't remember what it's called, the line that divides information. What's it called? That thing. Anyone know the word? It's very helpful anyway. I use them a lot. To sort of give just a little bit more division between two pieces of information. I think that's looking really good. I might group it and then just drop it down a bit. I don't want this thing to be pizza shadow. I'll group that together. So it moves as one. There we go. Cool. So from the beginning to our one, I think that important information has become much more legible. So the next thing I think I'll do is, I love the flag and I want to keep using it, but I think it's clouding our title a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use it in a different way. I'm going to make it much smaller. And it's just decorative, right? Oops, I'm doing it on the wrong file. So it's a cool thing to have, but it's actually not important information. So I'm going to just use it as a decoration in these corners. I think that looks cute and ties our red in with the rest. Now I'm going to take those shadows off because, like I said before, I don't think that that is important and doesn't help us be legible. So we could leave that Cooper Hewitt here. It's big enough that I think it's legible, but you can see how much better red type works on this yellow. So I'm going to do a few things to make sure that blue color is not sitting on yellow. It's really not a good layering of colors for contrast and legibility. So what I did there is I did a shortcut to add a rectangle to my page. I'm going to make a background for, actually a bit bright, so I'm going to get a darker version of this red because it's just too bright. There we go. Cool. I'm going to make sure the centered, it looks slightly off. There we go. Is this off too? Maybe ever so slightly. Nope, it's in the middle. Cool. All right. So the teal, I think, is not clear enough on that one. So I'm going to make that white. And what we have now lost is this amazing pop that the guy and the pizza have. So I'm going to make sure they remain at the front. Cool. So they're sitting at the front. It's really good. And we've also made this red rectangle shape that is pushing him forward as well. So his hair is sitting in front, which gives it more depth as well, which I think is a really good idea. So not only have the heading become much more legible and what you should be remembering, the name of the company and all the ways you can order pizza. The last thing I would do is, I think this is a little bit more important than it's been given. The blue on the yellow is not letting it stand out enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a background. I'm going to give it like a circle that's sort of a little bit more hand drawn, because our flag has that too. It's not just an icon. It's got a little bit of texture. I'll zoom in so you can see that. And I think they make a bit more sense together in the same design. So it's quite it's got some brush strokes. It's got some interest. So I'm going to use something similar to sort of tie them together. And again, I don't want that blue sitting on yellow. I want to delete that version. And I'm going to press T to get some text. And I think I might make it red. I'll keep this red going. And I'm going to make it our bolder font because I really like it. I'm going to use this from now on. Mont Bold. I think it's cool. And I reckon costing this much is something worth giving an exclamation mark to. Pretty important, I reckon. And then, unlike some of our other pieces of text where we've spaced them away, because we've now contained it in a circle, we can make it a bit tighter. So I'm going to bring in the line height so it all sits in that circle a bit more tightly. And the other thing we've lost by taking it off that really nice arch that he'd put around the pizza is that it had this really nice relationship with the pizza kind of coming around the corner. So I am going to give it a little bit of life by angling it like that. It's maybe not quite centered in there. Okay. So the main things we've done with Gio's design is legibility on all the important information. We've pretty much stuck with his color palette, but we've just taken away some extras like the Instagram logo that was adding additional colors. And we've really honed in on using the Italian flag and the pizza to bring out the rest of the color palette. Those are the main things. It's still very similar design. I'll show the original. The composition was awesome. I love the fun sort of playful dude with the pizza. It's sort of absurd and like I really love it. So I didn't want to touch any of that, but I think we've really improved what really matters to someone if they're walking past quickly at a bus stop. They've scanned that information really quickly, which is important. Cool.
Fantastic. And Giovanni says, thanks, looks more organized. Anissa added a comment that they would drop like a full stop or a marker between pizza, pasta, salad, and sandwich, like a little circle between the words as well.
It's a great idea.
Any other questions? Niti says, it's so beautiful.
Thanks.
Any other questions for this particular design or any of the designs? We've got a few minutes now. We've done really well for time, so we do have some time for some Q&A if you have.
I talk really fast. I'm so sorry. You can slow me down in the recording.
No, not at all. It was perfect. It's great. We've got time for some Q&A at the end, so feel free to drop those questions in. We did have a comment from Mike, who I think was your first design with the logo, and I think he came in a little bit late, so I didn't see how you remade the speech bubble. Was wondering how you resized it. I explained you dropped a circle on there, but maybe.
Oh yeah, I can really briefly. So just to remind everyone who was late, this was Mike's original logo. And basically I thought if it was going to get smaller and smaller, it was too complex. There was too many little details, too many little lines. And even in one version, he had another circle around it that was blue with another purple line. I just thought there was a lot going on. And what I did to the actual shape in the background, I'll duplicate this and take it apart. So there's your simplified paper plane. And then I made this sort of highlight shape just with two circles, one white and one the original color under there. And then what I did to simplify the shape of the actual speech bubble was I just put a circle on top. There's the original icon. And I just thought it would be cleaner and nicer if it was a perfect circle. That's all I did there. Does that answer your question, Mike?
Yeah, I think that's great. So yeah, just some of those shortcuts, just C for circle, R for rectangle, T for text. We used a few times now. There is a little question panel. Mike says, yes, thanks.
I think in here there's a shortcut list too, if you guys haven't found it. Here it is. So there's all the standard ones you'll be used to, but there are some really handy ones like the circle, text is T, R is rectangle, line is the new one, I think, which I'm going to guess is L, but I don't know. Oh, there we go. Add line. You just press L. Yeah, those are all super handy.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I think that wraps up, if we don't have any more questions, our design makeover session for today. So again, a huge thank you to you, Hannah. It was absolutely brilliant watching you rework some of these designs.
Oh,
And
it's such a good time. Thank you so much for trusting me with your work, Makeover and Nidhi. I thought it was really, really cool. Thank you.
Well, we look forward to having you on a future session again.
All the best, guys. Thank you so much.